Hello everyone, it's me Clayton. I just finished watching the latest Mobile Suit Gundam movie, Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, which is set to be part one of a trilogy of films that takes place after Chars Counterattack. And when it comes to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, it's always been one of the most revolutionary and well-known mecha franchises for grounding its mecha combat in stories about war and politics, and Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway is no exception, as it's part Gundam action movie and part political thriller, and both parts are done expertly. But let's get to the story, shall we? The story concerns a young Hathaway Noah, voiced by Kensho Ono, who happens to be on a plane with several delegates from the Earth Federation, who are under attack from these terrorists who are under the leadership of Mafdi. Basically, these terrorists want to overtake the Earth Federation for the sake of the people who are unfairly discriminated against by the Earth Federation, and for the environmental issues that the Federation is seemingly just not caring about. So when Hathaway Noah happens to help out with a terrorist attack, he also happens to run into a mysterious young blonde woman named Gigi, played by Reina Ueda, and he happens to become acquainted with a captain of the Earth Federation, known as Kenneth, played by Junichi Sawabe. And what follows is a series of plot twists and a series of character discoveries that basically could lead to the second coming of Char as we know it. But that's all I'll say about the story without spoiling anything. The story is actually one that reminds me more of a live-action political thriller more than a Gundam action movie most of the time, but that's actually a good thing, mainly because Hathaway and Kenneth are pretty interesting characters, mainly because they don't play out like typical anime characters that you'd expect, and their dialogue definitely sounds more like what you'd see in a live-action movie from, say, Christopher Nolan, or perhaps from a director of that same nature. It also helps that Gigi, the mysterious blonde woman who comes into Mr. Hathaway's life, is also pretty interesting in her own right. She does seem initially like a mysterious femme fatale in a sense, but she's, generally pretty witty and funny, and also rather pretty, to the point where I consider her to be one of those question marks when it comes to the franchise, to the point where I don't know whose side she's on or what she's planning, but she's definitely going to be interesting to follow in the future films, I'll admit. And of course, you can't have a Gundam movie without some great Gundam combat, and thankfully this movie has some of the best looking Gundam action to date. The CGI used for the Gundam mobile suits is pretty impressive, especially when it comes to the battles at both the midpoint of the film and also at the very end. Granted, those aren't going to be anyone's favorite Gundam battles ever, but they are well animated, they fit into the story well, and they do show off plenty of functions of the Gundam that you'd expect, from missiles to thrusters to lasers. They're all there. And the animation throughout the rest of the film is pretty good too. It's well directed, it's pretty detailed. You can tell Sunrise has a lot of faith in this as a trilogy, and you can tell when it comes to the visuals. They just look spectacular, especially when it comes to the characters. And the environments, they look spectacular too. It's definitely a movie with full of eye candy, and I'm not just referring to Gigi. So, I do admit you have to be aware of some Mobile Suit Gundam lore in order to understand or get the most out of the film, and I definitely recommend finishing Char Aznavour's story before going into this one. But if you have, and if you're starving for more Gundam content, this will definitely please you. It's not a perfect film, but I do think it's a good one to start a trilogy on. That's why I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. See you next time.